Here in part 2 of my videos on the fine-tuning argument, I will be defending the premises and refuting some common objections. The first objection is on physical necessity. According to the first alternative, physical necessity, the universe has to be life-permitting. The constancies and qualities must have the values they do, so that a life-prohibiting universe is physically impossible. Now, on the face of it, this alternative seems fantastically improbable. It would require us to say that a life-prohibiting universe is a physical impossibility. But why take such a radical view? The constancies are not determined by the laws of nature, so why couldn't they be different? Moreover, the arbitrary qualities are just boundaries, conditions on which the laws of nature operate. Nothing seems to make them necessary. So the opponent of design has taken a radical line that requires some proof, but there is none. The alternative is put forward as a bare possibility. Sometimes scientists do talk of a yet-to-be-discovered theory of everything, which certainly sounds like a physical explanation for everything, including the fine-tuning. But like so many of the colorful names given to scientific theories, the label is very misleading. A successful theory of everything would enable us to unify the four basic forces of nature: gravity, the weak force, the strong force, and electromagnetism, into a force carried by a single kind of particle. It would result in a great simplification of physics, but it would not even attempt to literally explain everything. For example, the most promising candidate for a theory of everything to date, so-called M-theory or superstring theory, only work if there are 11 dimensions. But the theory itself cannot explain why, just that a particular number of dimensions should exist. Moreover, M-theory does not predict uniquely a life-permitting universe. It permits a vast range of around 10 to the 500th power of different possible universes, all consisting with the same laws but varying in the values of constancies of nature. Almost all of these possible universes are life-prohibiting, so some explanation is needed to why out of all these possibilities a life-permitting universe exists. We cannot say that life-permitting universes are physically necessary, since based on M-theory at least, that's clearly false. So there is no evidence that a life-permitting universe is physically necessary. Quite the contrary. All the evidence indicates that life-prohibiting universes are not only possible, but are far, far more likely than life-permitting universes. That leads us to the second alternative. Could the fine-tuning be due simply to chance? According to this alternative, it's an accident that all the constancies and quantities fall into the life-permitting range. We basically just lucked out. The fundamental problem here is that the chances that the universe that exists should happen to be life-permitting are so remote that this alternative becomes unreasonable. Sometimes people will appeal to the example of a lottery in order to justify the second alternative. In a lottery where all the tickets are sold, it is fantastically improbable that any one person should win, yet someone has to win. It would be unjustified for the winner, whoever he may be, to say, the odds against me winning are 20 million to 1 and yet I won. The lottery must be rigged. In the same way, they say some universe out of the range of possible universes has to exist. The winner of the universal lottery would also be unjustified to think that because his universe exists, this must have been the result of design, not chance. All the universes are equally improbable, but one of them, by chance, has to win. This analogy is actually very helpful because it enables us to see clearly where the advocates of chance have misunderstood the argument for design, and to offer a more accurate analogy in its place. Contrary to popular impression, the argument for design is not trying to explain why this particular universe exists, whether it's trying to explain why a life-permitting universe exists. The lottery analogy was misconceived because it's focused on why a particular person won. The correct analogy would be a lottery in which billions and billions and billions of white ping pong balls were mixed together with just one black ping pong ball, and you were told that one ball will be randomly selected out of the horde. If it's a black ball, you will be allowed to live. If it's a white ball, you'll be shot. Now notice that any particular ball that is randomly selected is equally improbable. No matter which ball rolls down the chute, the odds against that ball are fantastically improbable. But some ball must roll down the chute. This is the point illustrated by the first lottery analogy. That point, however, is irrelevant, because we're not trying to explain why this particular ball was picked. The critical point is that whichever ball rolls down the chute, it is overwhelmingly improbable that it will be a white ball rather than a black ball. Getting the black ball is more improbable than getting any particular white ball, but it is incomprehensibly more probable that you will get a white ball instead of a black one. So if a black ball rolls down the chute, you certainly should suspect that the lottery was rigged to let you live. So in the correct analogy, we are not interested in why we got the particular ball we did. Rather, we are puzzled by, against overwhelming odds, you got the life-permitting ball rather than the life-prohibiting ball. The question is not addressed by saying, well, some ball had to be picked. In the same way, some universe has to exist, but whichever universe exists, it is incomprehensibly more probable that you will get the life-prohibiting rather than the life-permitting. So we still need some explanation why a life-permitting universe exists. Some people have argued that no explanation is needed for why we observe a life-permitting universe, because that's the only kind of universe we can observe. If the universe were not life-permitting, then we wouldn't be here asking about it. This reasoning is fallacious. The fact that we can observe a life-permitting universe does nothing to eliminate the need for an explanation of why a life-permitting universe exists. Again, an illustration can help. Imagine you are traveling abroad and arrested on trumped-up drug charges. You are dragged in front of a firing squad of 100 trained marksmen standing at point-blank range. You then hear the command given, ready, aim, fire. You hear the deafening sound of guns, and then you observe that you are still alive, and that all of the 100 marksmen missed. Now, what would you conclude? Well, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that they all missed. After all, if they hadn't all missed, I wouldn't be here to be surprised at all. Nothing more needs to be explained. Of course not. It is true that you shouldn't be surprised that you observe that you are not dead, since if you were dead, you wouldn't be able to observe it. But you should still be surprised that you observe that you are alive, in light of the enormous improbability that all the marksmen would miss. Indeed, you'd probably conclude that they all missed on purpose, that the whole thing was set up, engineered for some reason by someone. Another objection that you may come across is the multiverse hypothesis. Basically, the multiverse hypothesis suggests that there is an infinite number of universes, and that of this infinite number of universes, there has to be one that is finely tuned and is life permitting. One way to respond to the many worlds hypothesis would be to show that the multiverse itself also involves fine-tuning. For in order to be scientifically credible, some plausible mechanism must be suggested for generating the many worlds. But if the many worlds hypothesis is to be successful in attributing fine-tuning to chance alone, then the mechanism that generates the many worlds had better not be fine-tuned itself, for if it is, then the problem arises all over again. How do you explain the fine-tuning of the multiverse? The possible mechanisms for generating the world ensemble are so vague that it's far from clear that the physics governing the multiverse will not involve any fine-tuning. For example, if M theory is the physics of the multiverse, then it remains unexplained, as we've seen, why exactly 11 dimensions exist, and the mechanisms that actualize all the possibilities in the cosmic landscape may involve fine-tuning. So postulation of a world ensemble is by itself not enough to justify the alternative of chance. Moreover, many theorists are skeptical of the many worlds hypothesis itself. Take, for example, the Borg-Guth-Vilenkum theory, which requires that even a multiverse of bubble universes must have a beginning. In that case, the mechanism that generates the bubble universes has been chugging along for only a finite amount of time. So by now, there may well be only a finite number of bubbles in the world ensemble, which may not be enough to generate the appearance of a finely tuned universe by chance alone. There simply is no evidence that the sort of world ensemble required by the many worlds hypothesis actually exists. By contrast, we have good independent reasons for believing in a designer of the cosmos. Therefore, it seems to me that of the three alternatives before us, physical necessity, chance, or design, the most plausible of the three is design. Plato and Aristotle would doubtlessly be gratified by modern science's vindication of their view.